Okay, well, let's get started. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's so great to see all of you online tonight, and thank you for joining us. I'm sure a few of you already know about SCORE, but if you allow me, I'll just give you a little bit of an update on our local SCORE chapter headquartered in Greenville. We have 50 volunteers. We are volunteer business mentors. We're not consultants. We don't get paid. We're actually a nonprofit division of the SBA. So we've got plenty of resources for those that are thinking about starting a new business, as well as individuals that are in business that might need a little bit of help. I'll introduce myself. My name is Fred Robb, and the other gentleman that's online with us tonight is Brandon Worley. You'll learn a lot more about Brandon as we go forward, but in addition to being a mentor, he's also a business owner, runs his own nonprofit organization locally here, and a veteran. So Brandon's been a valuable asset to us as we had continued to move forward. Speaking of SCORE, this is one of about 53 workshops that we have each year. Brandon and I are one of the dozen instructors that we have. Our workshop tonight, of course, as you know, is basic business startup information. So in a nutshell, there's about 12 or 15 things that we try to recommend to all of our new clients. And I mentioned earlier, we have 2 of my clients that are online tonight. So again, welcome to everyone. And what we try to do is review these 15 or 20 or so things. Each and every one of your business ideas need to be worked through, try to develop a solid business plan and accompanying it with some good, solid financial advice. And that will help guarantee the success of your business. So without further ado, we'll get started here. And I mentioned already, my name is Fred Robb. Brandon's joining us. Brandon will join us a little bit later on for the marketing and business readiness assessment. I'm going to cover the finance and business organization part of it. So sort of the boring stuff. Brandon gets to have all the fun and talk about the cool stuff. So I'll get started. I mentioned that we are a nonprofit division of the SBA. So we have tremendous resources. Brandon and I will tell all of our clients that we have over 2,000 different articles and resources that are available, no charge, off of our regular SCORE website. So if you're looking for something, plug it into the drop-down menu and you should be able to find practically an answer for every one of your questions, whether it's a partnership agreement or how do you organize a company, or maybe even some questions about financing. There's a lot of information that's available as our point. So as a business mentor, we try to recommend that our clients who are going through this process not only work with us individually, but also take advantage of all those resources that the federal government provides. They're free, don't cost you a dime, and you'll learn an awful lot. Our agenda tonight, as I mentioned, I'm going to go through some business plan basics, the types of businesses that you might want to consider, organization requirements, and funding and cash management. We'll have a little bit of a break here in about 20 minutes or so for our questions and answers. But I recommended to several of the attendees already this evening that if you have any questions, don't hesitate to stop us. And how you'll do that is simply hit the chat button or the questions and answer button below. Brandon and I are both watching them, and we'll be glad to stop wherever you have a question and answer them. So I mentioned that Brandon will take care of the second half and also a wrap up. He's going to cover critical success factors, marketing your business, and a readiness assessment that's pretty valuable. I might also suggest, or I should say, I might also add that if you haven't already received the attachments for this evening's workshop, I'll send them to you after the workshop. It includes a great workbook, several worksheets, so some great follow-up information. Anything that you see today on this workshop slide presentation will all be included in the workbook that we're going to send. So let's get started. The essentials for practically anything that you're going to need as you start your business is simply a business plan, or what we call a roadmap. It's important that you have this because you need to set a solid list of goals and objectives combined with some financial projections, and it creates a business plan that you'll follow from this point forward. Now, the key element here is that it can be fluid. In fact, you'll probably wind up changing it several times before you finish organizing your business or actually get it up and running. So don't hesitate to change your business plans as long as they make sense. It's an evolution thing. And the point I'm making is that as we go through this process tonight, we're going to strongly recommend that you take all of those great ideas about your business plans and write them down. It doesn't have to be terribly sophisticated. You don't have to worry about putting it in a special format at this point. If you are just now planning to start a business, make it a point to write all those great ideas down. You can organize them in any fashion that you're comfortable with. If you like to do it on a computer, put it in a Word document, put it on your phone. The key thing here is to take those great ideas you have, write them down, and you're able to refer to them later on. And so why I think this is so important is that if you take those ideas, commit them to a paper or some format that you're comfortable with, it's liberating. Now that's a fancy word, but simply stated, if you take these ideas, you formalize them, put them down on a piece of paper, you can move on to other things that you need to think about. So it's a great idea to start that record keeping now, and you'll find that those plans will continue to build on each other as you move forward with a process. You're going to ask a lot of questions to a lot of people. So make sure that you make a note of those things to keep them for future reference. That's what it's all about. So the importance of a business plan, very, very clearly, it encourages an objective view. In other words, you want to be objective. There's really nothing emotional about running a business. It shouldn't be. It's all fact. It's based on whatever you can put together as far as your business plan is concerned, emotions set aside, and then you start building the plan one after the other. It actually becomes, as I mentioned earlier, a foundation for all the things that you're going to do moving forward. And here's the other part. It's a great management tool to communicate your ideas on what you think your business should be or could be to not only yourself, but to others that you're speaking to, possibly your employees in the future, or even more important, it's a powerful tool for those that might become investors or a financial institution. So you're going to need those things as you start moving forward. So that's why we really stress the importance of developing a business plan. Okay, make the plan your own. Again, I'm not an advocate with all of those fancy business plan softwares that are out there, even though they're very important. It depends on how sophisticated your business is. In my case, my business was pretty simple. Brandon will add, when he started his nonprofit business, it was also a fairly simple process. So the more complicated the business is, possibly the more funding that you're going to require. You can imagine it will require a whole lot more work and a more sophisticated business plan. The point I'm making is, don't get hung up on the format itself. It's most important, as I mentioned earlier, commit those ideas to paper. So that business plan should demonstrate your vision of what your business is going to be when you first start out, and where will it be in 2 or 3 or 5 years? And that's the fun part. You can imagine where your company will grow in 2 or 3 or 5 years, and do a little dreaming. It's okay. We're not ready to lock in all those specifics yet, but creating that vision for your business plan is very important. It's also motivating. And so that's what we really want to encourage. If you're interested in starting a business, no matter how complicated or simple it would be, it starts with the business plan and dream on, but write it down. A detailed market and competitive research is essential. So I have clients that want to start a barbershop in Anderson, South Carolina. Great. We probably need another barbershop in Anderson. But the important thing is to understand, what is the competition out there? So even though you might have a good, solid idea for a business, it's very important to understand what's the competitive environment. So what other companies are out there that have the same idea, product, or service that you do? And how will that impact your business plan? So think about that. If you start thinking about your business, no matter whether it's a product or a service, how many other people are in the business? That's an important part to start really formalizing how we're going to move forward. Okay, and there's a little bit about good formatting and clear writing. That's a little bit further along, down the line. So we start formalizing your business plan. Possibly we have to present that plan to a financial institution. Then of course it's required a little bit more professional and clear writing to get your message across. And of course, most importantly, gain their trust because they want to, or you want them to lend you some money. And at the end of it, a great executive summary. Things that we can worry about a little bit later on. Okay, in this business plan, there's a very simple format. It contains these elements. If you are going into business as a sole proprietor, that's fine. It's you. That's all that matters. You're the main person in the company. You're the owner, the sole proprietor. That's fine. However, if you're planning on having partners, maybe it's a spouse, or maybe it's a relative or a good friend that wants to get into the business with you together. That's fine. You just need to list those partners individually so that everybody's clear on who's involved in your business venture. The second part of it is, what are you going to do? What does your business do? Is it a barber shop? Is it a product? Is it a service? So list those key activities. Here's an important one that everybody gets hung up on. It's a big fancy term called value proposition. But simply stated, what you want to define in your business plan from the very, very early stages is what's going to be different about your product or service than those others that are providing the same thing. So the value proposition is what's going to differentiate your business from anybody else. It's important to think about that in the early stages because it can change your business plan. And it's also a good thing for you to start formulating how you're going to get that message across to all of your potential customers. Okay, customer relationships. Simply stated, where do you plan on selling this product or service? Is it going to be online? Are you going to have a brick and mortar retail store? Will you use other places to sell your product or service? Target what customers that you're going after. Write them down. Who's going to be the most ideal customer for your business? Those are the things you want to recognize early. Again, that has a lot to do with the next part of it, which is customer segments. Who are you going to serve best? And as part of that, will that customer be willing to pay a premium for your product or service? Or are you going to be in mid-range? Or will it be a value product offering? So the difference, the one I love to use all the time, Starbucks charges $4 for a cup of coffee. The exact same coffee, in my opinion, that I buy at Quick Trip for $1.70. So that already tells you what kind of a consumer I am. Now, I like Starbucks coffee too, but I'm not willing to put out $4 for a cup of coffee. So I am a value shopper. I'm also retired. So my point I'm making, take a look at your product or service and start positioning those things early on. Will it be a value product or will it be a higher quality product? And that's going to determine what steps you need to take to position your product early on and how you're going to get it to market. And then the most important thing, number 7, revenue streams. Simply stated, how are you going to get money for the product or service that you're providing? So it's important to realize that if you have the customers in mind, the product that you've already decided to sell or service, where are you going to get the money? But that's why we're in business. You are in business to replace the income that you're probably going to have to give up at some point from your current job. So we want to focus on revenue streams or revenue or income, any term you'd like to use. The bottom line, you need to figure out where and how we're going to get the money to continue your business. Okay, this is a great form. If you haven't received it already, I'm going to send it to you. This is called a business model blank canvas, okay? It asks 12 very pointed questions about your business plan. Remember a minute ago, I said, don't get hung up on a particular fancy software program for a business plan. And I still recommend that. The difference between those software programs that you can get later on if you'd like, or maybe even use one today, and this one is that it asks very basic questions. So let's think of it as a starter program. Let's think of it as a way to take some of those items you've already got in your mind and try to formalize them, flesh them out a little bit. See if they make some sense to you. And it also is a way for you to ask other people's opinion if you're comfortable doing that. So we're not going to get into each one of these questions, but this questionnaire will come to you. And in the back of the form, of course, is blank. So the front, the one I showed you a minute ago, give you the instructions on what to fill out, and then a form in the back that you can print out all of your ideas. It's a good starter point. It's a great tool that we use all the time for all of our new clients. Now, I have a question that's popped up. Brandon, are you online? It says, can you send me a link? Yes, we can. Oh, and Brandon's typing an answer. So I'll stop.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Brandon. You're going to do that. I'll keep going. Okay, so if you don't have any questions about the business plan template that we've just shown you, I'm going to move forward. Don't forget, you'll get this in the mail or in the email here right after the work session if you haven't already received it. Let's talk about business options. There's not that many of them, and in many cases, what we'll start out with in most of our clients is creating a LLC, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Maybe you're already familiar with the term, but these are some things that we're going to challenge you to think about in establishing your new business. Starts with advantages of a new business. Pretty easy to read. You're not hampered by the previous bad image or technology problems because you're going to start from scratch. You can choose whatever location, name, or logo, or whatever you like. You can explore all kinds of new markets and directions, and you can see your dreams come true. That's a great outcome. A few of us have experienced it, and I can tell you it's very rewarding. Here's the other side of the equation. The disadvantages of starting a new business is pretty obvious. There's no base. So you really need to build it from the ground up. So that means that the first day you open your doors, there may not be any business. And we'll talk about how you're going to plan for that a little bit later on. So the disadvantage of a new business, obviously, no business. You got to start from scratch. There's a greater risk. You don't have any financial tracking. It could be difficult to get financing depending on your business plan and also your investment that you want to, put into the business. And then finally, and unfortunately it happens, you could actually see your dreams, your business plans not work out so well for you. That's why we're suggesting that you contact us. Doesn't cost you a dime. There's no obligations. Brandon and myself and 48 other mentors like to volunteer our time to help people get into business. And we don't expect anything except a thank you at the end of the day. And maybe we can help you avoid some of the problems that we encountered when we were starting our businesses. Okay, let's talk about buying a business. So when you buy a business, you have established clientele and hopefully volume and suppliers and even a location. Again, if you're looking at a retail store. The other advantages are you're already known in the business. So you're a proven entity. And the other owner, in the process of transitioning from him selling or her selling the business to you, can help you. They can help you get it off the ground, maybe even stick around for a little while and help you run the business. You have records to review, so you've got a proven set of, I guess you'd say a proven sales formula because it's already worked that far, that long. So it's a good thing. And of course, it's easier to obtain financing. If you start a business or buy a business, most of the time you have records that you can provide to a financial institution, and they'll be more likely, I should say, to provide you some business startup monies when you have a proven or already existing business. The disadvantages, well, you can read them. There might be some hidden issues. There's possibly a poor reputation, maybe even debt. Here's one. Maybe the previous owner wasn't such a good person. Maybe they didn't have a very good reputation. And so those are the things you need to explore when you start doing your diligence about buying an existing company. You really need to find out what kind of a business that they run and what the reputation is in the business. And by the way, after you do all this research, there's really no guarantee that it'll success. It's up to you. You need to make the commitment, do the research, and move the business forward. Of course, as I said earlier, it requires a lot of research, and we might even be able to help you with that. Here's an interesting one. I've got quite a few of our clients, and several of them have considered a franchise. Now, the first thing that comes to people's mind is, well, a franchise is a McDonald's. Well, if you got $1 million, you can buy yourself a McDonald's franchise. I don't think a lot of us have $1 million to spend, but that's how they get started. I'll use a great example. My cousin and I graduated from high school years and years ago in Pittsburgh. I went off in one direction to the corporate world, and he started working at Arby's. Okay, I didn't think that was such a good job, but today he owns 66 Arby's stores with an annual revenue of each store to him of $100,000 a piece. So do the math. He makes $6.6 million a year. What happens with a franchise is you get the first one up and running. That one helps you buy the second one. The first two buy the third. Those three buy the fourth. And that's how it continues to grow. So franchises are a great opportunity. It requires you to think about these things, though. When you look at a franchise, it could be a UPS type store. It could be other types of franchise locations, cleaning services, et cetera. You've seen them all. You want to know what kind of an image they have. And of course, is the product or service that they provide a quality product so that you can put your name in along with theirs. So that's important. Even though a franchise has a particular logo and a lot of marketing behind it, it's still you. You're still that franchise owner. So that you need to make sure that those two things match. What you want to represent for yourself and your company, will that match the franchise that you're considering? Now, I talked a minute ago about the advantages. Marketing and sales power, they got plenty, but you're going to pay for that. So each month with a franchise, as you can imagine, a portion of your income, a portion of your revenue goes to pay for the franchise. And of course, there's access to lots of franchises out there. And we have actually a workshop coming up on franchises, if that's something you'd like to consider. Now, if you're a true entrepreneur and you really think that you would like to do something on your own and without a lot of help and guidance, then these are the things that a franchise won't let you do. In other words, they control everything. So it's really a loss of control. You're really not oftentimes your own boss. You have to do what that franchisee asks you to do and comply with their regulations, or you'll have a problem with them. And they will also have operational boundaries, maybe even certain areas that you can cover and certain areas that you can't. So it's something to think about. Now, again, we don't have a whole lot of clients that do a franchise, but it's something to consider. How about this one? A lot of my clients start their business at home. It's a great place to start. It's certainly convenient. It's certainly less expensive, and it can be very flexible. Plus, if you're starting your own business online or at home, you may be able to keep your current job, keep that income flowing until things get up and running to where you can allow this company, your own company, to start providing you enough income. So it's not a bad way to start. Now, there are some tax advantages, although I think there's some things that have changed. Oftentimes, the standard deduction will offset that. I'm not a tax guy, but in the old days, you used to be able to write off some of that square footage. Sometimes it doesn't apply anymore. So think about that. Starting your business at home has some disadvantages, and I can speak for that. Working for a corporation, when I worked out of the house, it drove me crazy. There was a lot of distractions. There was things that I couldn't get myself into versus myself working in an office with other people. So it can be somewhat limiting. And the last thing to think about, any type of a home-based business, a lot of people can do it. So there's really no barrier to starting your business at home. So you'll have a lot of competition. No matter what your product or service is, likely there's an existing online business today. That's all you have to do is think about those things. Okay, nonprofit. Boy, Brandon, he's the expert, but I'll still read some of this stuff off for you. Not a lot of our clients do a nonprofit because at the end of the day, a nonprofit business that Brandon will attest to is really not your company. Even though you put a lot of your own blood, sweat, and everything else into the business, it's really owned and operated by the board of regents or board of directors. Anything you can suggest there, Brandon? Nonprofits?
Yeah, essentially, it's essentially the communities, and then it's operated by a board of directors and volunteers and staff, and so if it were to go bankrupt, the assets go back to the community.
Right, right. So some of the advantages are you may qualify for some grants, but Brandon, grants pretty tough to get a hold of these days?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's time, just like anything. And there's tons of money out there for to where there's plenty of nonprofits here in the upstate, and there's tons more resources available as far as funding. So there's really, you might think you're competing, and yes, you are competing on some grants, but I'd say there really is just about an endless amount of resources whenever you get into helping people and you find that specific focus. So
when you started your nonprofit, did you come to SCORE for a mentor? That's a loaded question.
I did actually. I started with the presentation after I got a mentor, started my business plan, which was the nonprofit at the time. And then the business plan, once I was able to lay it out and map everything and what I needed to do and the next steps I needed to take, here we are, 3 years later, and it's just about 10x,
Excellent. Okay. Well, let's move on. So I've given you some ideas about types of businesses to consider. Now, how do we make it all legal? Remember a minute ago, I talked about the vast majority of our clients will want to start an LLC. Most of you know what that stands for, but in short, LLCs are a limited liability corporation. They're very easy to start. You simply have to register your LLC in the state. And and later on, we'll explain how to do that, but it's relatively simple. The key element of an LLC is just as it says, it limits the liability of anything that happens within your business away from your personal assets. Now, here's the caveat to all of that. An LLC limits any type of liability or things that can happen within your company so that they can't go after your personal assets. That's important because we always want to keep our business monies and assets separate from your personal assets, and the LLC protects that. However, a lot of people think that because you have an LLC, you can't be sued or they can't come after your personal assets. That's false. Even if you have an LLC or an S Corp or any type of other organization, depending on what happens, you can still be sued. That's why you have insurance. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So just to clarify that, I wanted to make sure you're aware of the difference between an LLC and protection of your own personal assets. So let's talk about how to start an LLC. Okay, step one, what name do you want? Number two, choose a registered agent. Okay, a registered agent is simply someone that gets the mail. So if somebody wants to mail you something, I know I'm making this simple, but it's the truth. A registered agent is simply another person within the company environment that people can get a hold of in case you're not available. So my registered agent happens to be my wife. And it's that simple. Now, you can go online and you can employ a legal firm somewhere between $50 and $100 to be your registered agent. But bear in mind, the only responsibility they have is an alternative point of contact for your business. So be careful. You don't need to go and spend any money starting your company unless it's absolutely necessary. Okay, file the articles of organization. Simply stated, when you get onto this form, and I'll show you in a minute where to do this for the state of South Carolina. It just simply explains what does your company do. And the step 4 is what kind of an operating agreement? Are there any other people involved in your business? Step 5 is an EIN, obtaining an EIN. So if you don't know what that means, it's simply an employer identification number. So simply stated, for the federal government, it's your company's basically social security number. So that's all it is. It takes that much, maybe 15, 20 minutes to register with the state, and then you can get an EIN online very simply. Remember a minute ago, I explained we want to make sure that your personal assets are always kept separate bookkeeping, separate checking account. Anything that happens, any transactions that happen with your company should be separated from your personal expenses and any personal income. Very important to make sure that that's separated. Okay, register your LLC in the state of South Carolina. It costs you about $170 and you're in business. Now, a lot of my clients say, do I need to do that? Do I need to have an LLC? All I want to do is some cleaning part-time. And I have several clients that want to hire me maybe to clean or to cut grass or do some manual labor or consult with a computer technology business, something like that. If you want to do that on your own, you can do that. You can do that today. You don't have to do a thing. It's called a sole proprietorship. So legally, you can do that today. The key to that is make sure you keep track of all your expenses and your income, again, separately as a sole proprietor, because at some point you could be audited by the IRS, and that's when it gets very messy. So tomorrow you could start your business as a sole proprietor, but remember that protection you get with an LLC. It's one extra step. It's worth $170 to register. And if you don't use it, or you don't think it's worth it in a couple of years, it just goes away. But once you do an LLC, you're registered for life. So think about that. Okay, government regulations. See this website, and again, you're going to get copies of this. This is where you actually go online to register all of your information about your company, including applying for an LLC. It's called South Carolina Business One Stop, or scbos.sc.gov. It's a great website. I can tell you this from experience. It's very intuitive. It works very well. It's probably one of the best government work websites that I've worked with. It's very user-friendly. It's not confusing, and it works extremely well, and you'll be shocked on how fast it goes. So think about that. That's a website that you want to use to get your business started, and you can see all the things you can find out about your business as you get it started off this website. It's all one place, one stop. Okay. Remember a minute ago we talked about LLCs? Well, I'm not an insurance agent. I do have insurance, but I can tell you that in considering your company. And of course, a lot of this has to do with the complexity of your business. Maybe you don't need all of this, but at the very least, you need to consider what's going to be important to protect you, protect your company. So in some cases, you may need property and fire insurance or general liability insurance. That's that insurance policy that protects you and your personal assets in case something happens. Maybe even something that would happen in a contract that you would write. There could be some potential liability if those things aren't adhered to correctly. That's where that insurance policy helps you. It's the same thing with errors and omissions. Of course, vehicles, as you would imagine. There's also an umbrella policy. And again, I'm not an insurance agent, but they can provide you with a blanket policy to cover you with most everything. Workman's comp and health and life, those are really only necessary as your business becomes more complex. If you're a single or you have a partner or two, you're okay. When you start getting into employees within the total corporation of 5 or so, that's when you need to start thinking about these other things for your business. But for right now, if you're a small business operator, you don't need to really focus on those things that much. Most of my clients don't need those until they start growing and their business becomes more complex. Some other things, business interruption, cybersecurity, and the directors and officers. If you, like Brandon, run a nonprofit, sometimes you need to protect the officers of the nonprofit with the insurance company, insurance policy. Okay, let's move on. You're not alone. We talked to you a little while ago about having a business mentor from SCORE. Well, this is the rest of your team. And a lot of my clients don't think of it in terms of a team until they realize the value of each and every one of these individuals. Now, the first 3 people that you see on this team are in green for a reason. These people are typically there to help you or give you good, sound business advice. In most cases, will not cost you anything. So in most cases, a banker, get a bank that you're comfortable with, meet somebody there. Usually there's a business development associate at every bank that I know of. They'll be glad to sit down and talk to you and give you some good advice. And of course, they'll probably recommend starting a separate account, as we've already talked about, and of course, your business mentor. The rest of your team could cost you some money, as you can imagine. Now, next one is a lawyer. A lot of my clients use LegalZoom or some other online services, which are fine. In the old days, I used to sit in front of a lawyer in a beautiful mahogany desk and pay the person $350, $400 an hour to give me some advice and walk away. But today, you can do that online for 20 bucks. So the point is, there are other resources you can use. But a lawyer is not a bad person to have on at least a relationship with, someone that you know. Maybe it's someone that you're acquainted with from other family matters. But the key is, if you are really going to require some legal advice, an attorney, a business attorney, can be your best ally. So don't think about it as, somewhere you're going to spend your money. Think of it as another piece of protecting yourself and your company. Of course, an accountant, depending again on the complexity of your company, as it starts to grow, you may require an accountant or a CPS or an accounting firm. I have some accounting firms that my clients use that cost them $100 a month. And the best news about that is an accounting firm can take a lot of that paperwork off your desk. So on Friday night, you can sit there and watch Blue Bloods instead of doing your paperwork. And that's an important thing, which Brandon's going to talk about. Okay, IT assistants. Maybe your cousin or your nephew, or in my case, my son, who's much younger than me, can provide me more IT experience than I could ever imagine. But I learn a lot. Go along the line and work with him. I'll learn a lot. Maybe your business requires some more help when it comes to social media or help you market your company online. These individuals, there's plenty of them out there, can be relatively inexpensive, can be a great asset to getting your company off the ground, especially from the very beginning. So don't discount those. And as we start talking about your financial plan, maybe we even consider part of those expenses up front to help you get your business launched. Okay, and of course, payroll service, same thing as an accounting company. It can help you in the long run because you're going to spend a lot of time running your company, especially at first. And when you can afford a little bit more of your own personal time by employing some other member of your team to do some work, it goes a long way. So think about those as you're putting your plan together. Okay, we're moving on. Financial matters. What do we need to think about? When I start working with my clients, the first thing I ask them to do is, I got it. You want to start a company? I know what it's like. It's a wonderful thing. It's a great feeling. You're energized. You really want to get out there and get this thing going. But what is the most important thing to consider about starting a company? It is replacing your income. Okay, you may only be able to do it initially part-time, but long-term, the reason that you're starting your company is to replace your income that you're currently making somewhere else, whether it's Michelin or any other company you're working for. Your number one goal in starting your company is to make sure that you have a plan to replace the income that you're currently making. And that means understanding what is your current monthly cost of living expenses. Now, my clients hate me when I drag them into this because it's an exercise that makes you look at what your personal expenses are. It's none of my business. I don't really ever see it. But what this means is you need to understand exactly where you are at with your own personal finances first. And you understand why that's so important. How much money are you making a year right now? How much money do you spend a year? Do you have, a car loan, a house or a mortgage or insurance, food, your MasterCard bill, whatever else? You need to have a good understanding of where your personal finances sit first before you move forward with your own business plan. Because after all, when you start your company, the last line on this slide tells you everything you need to know. It could take you 6 to 12 months in your business to generate enough revenue to start paying yourself. Now, some of my clients use their new business or start a new business and they have an alternative source. Maybe their spouse is already working and then that's fine. That's great. We get it. But if you're thinking about making this your main income source, the first place you need to start is your personal income. And that starts with this. You'll get this in the email if you haven't gotten it already. Very simple. It's a little crude and it's supposed to be that way because we'd like you to fill this thing out. You need to fill this out. Understand where your personal expenses are. So you do this first one monthly, and then you take it and you divide it or multiply it by 12 to understand how much money you're going to need for a whole year. And that way you can use that as your target income base, not revenue, but your income base in order to make good, solid business decisions on how you're going to move forward with your business plan. Sounds pretty capitalistic, but it's also realistic. You need to understand that if you're going to start a company, your number one goal is to replace your income. And that's how it all starts. Know how much you spend before you move forward. This is another big part, startup cash needs. So when you think about starting your company, again, depending on the complexity or whatever business you want to start, are you going to need things like equipment, capital goods, improvements for a building or an office? Those are going to cost you some money. We talked a little bit about licenses and permits. If you open a business in downtown Greenville, you'll need a city license. That's, I don't know, a couple $100 a year. All those things need to be considered and put into your financial plan. There may be some professional fees, whether they're realtor fees or maybe some other attorneys may have to be involved. Those things need to be considered. How about if you want to start a company that provides a product, maybe cookies, or maybe some other type of product that you have invented or that you want to source, or you want to sell shoes online, whatever it is. You're going to have to consider how much money you need in order to get that initial inventory. And that takes time and planning. That's all part of the startup cash needs. And here's the most important one, is your capital reserve. That's a big word. All it simply means is you got enough cash to carry you through. So you have to have enough cash when you put your budget together to make sure that you can pay for everything, because it's going to take time for your new customers to start paying you back. So you have to have enough money to take you through that period of time. And if you see that little red line on the bottom of the slide, that says the Simple Steps reference page on page 45 and 46. If you remember a little bit earlier, I told you that if you haven't already received it, I'm sending you this workbook. That's where you'll find a lot of help when it comes to understanding or recognizing the startup needs. It's on page 45 and 46. So think about those. Now, in addition to the startup money, you got other things to think about. So things like salaries. Well, certainly if you're a sole proprietor or an individual, you'll need to think about how you're going to replace that income that I've harped at you already about. But maybe you have a partner, so you need to consider that income, those salaries as well. So all those things need to be considered in the budget, as well as rent, insurance, taxes, advertising, interest, utilities and maintenance, if that's part of your business, and possibly an operating system. Well, simply stated, if you do run a barbershop, you're going to need, something to keep track of all the transactions. 12 bucks a haircut, you got to have some way to record all that, or a bakery, or whatever your business might be. So you might have to spend some money on an operating system. Okay, here's a slogan that I've lived and died with for 50 years in starting and running businesses. Cash is king, meaning this: you got to have enough cash to pay the bills. Here's a bad statistic, but it's a real one. So think about this. 50% of the companies that get started today will be out of business in 3 years. And it's not because their business failed to sell the product or service. It's not because they didn't do a good job marketing the product. It's not because they had a bad reputation in the business. It's not because of any other thing but this. They ran out of money. So cash is king. You've got to have enough cash to pay the bills, especially during the period of time from when you sell that product or service to when the customer actually pays you. So that's an accounting principle I've lived with and died with for 50 years. Cash is king. And the other slogan the accountants love: collect fast, pay slow, or basically pay on time. So if you've got a bill coming up, pay it on time, because you don't want to pay any type of service charge or finance fees. That's my lesson on cash and accounting. Oh, okay. Harping more on cash. Open a separate bank account. Deposit all the receipts, everything intact. So that's an easy way to keep track of the cash that's coming in, and an easy way to keep track of the money that's going out. Use your petty cash, maybe even a company credit card, although be careful with company credit cards. You already know, costs you a lot of money to pay off the bill if you are late. Hang on to the cash as long as possible. Reconcile your checking account or your bank statements monthly. There are programs even as simple as an Excel spreadsheet that'll make that thing very easy. So it's not that old days where you had to go through all your checks and all that stuff. It's a simple process today. The key issue here: keep track of the cash, the money coming in, the money going out. And then the last bit of advice as you get started here, you have to think about forecasting how much money you're going to spend in the next 6 months and how much you anticipate coming in. It's all an accounting process. That's part of the important part of making sure that you're managing your business properly. Okay, I'm going to repeat this. We put this in for a reason. A lot of people think that we're going to start this business and you're alone. And that's not true at all, because these people can be a vital part of you starting and operating your business from that point forward. And I'll stress that business mentor. We're glad to do it. We love helping people. And we don't judge. We're not here to understand why or what type of business you want to get in. What we're here to do is to give you some basic business principles that will help you succeed. So we don't judge, we just kind of nudge you along. I think we're at a point, Brandon, that we've got a couple of questions. Can you kind of help us there a little bit? The one question came up about business insurance for a home-based business. Any thoughts on that?
As far as having business insurance out of a home?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, starting out, it's really just what risk are you taking? What's your liability? I mean, if you're operating out of your home, it just depends. I mean, if people are coming on site, you're taking a general liability risk, but essentially your homeowner's policy should cover that. But like if you got an online store and somebody's information gets hacked from your payment portal, right? That's a different type of insurance you're gonna be looking. So I'd recommend, yes, but starting out, when you got to keep your expenses low, it's really what's the risk you're willing to take,
And did you find a business insurance agent to help you, or did you use like your regular insurance guy?
No, so I shopped around, used a few different brokers like Travelers, or a local company I went with was the Furman Insurance Agency right near the Bon Secours. They just had the best rates for what I was looking for, but essentially, shop around, use different brokers, and get your quotes and compare your coverages. But for the nonprofit to have $1 million protected or whatever for the board to protect all my officers, I want to say it's like $800 a year.
Yeah.
And then probably like another $700 for just general liability for the commercial side.
Yeah. That's a good point. And one other thing, and we talk about this a lot, Brandon, is you've got to be comfortable with the people that are on your team. If you don't like an insurance person that you first started to talk to, move on. If you don't like the banker that you're talking to, go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. It's your business. And you have to be assertive enough to say, can I work with this person? Or is this person even getting what I'm trying to say? So be assertive and pick the one that you're the most comfortable with. And that's for sure. Andrea asked me another question here online, Brandon. In your case, do you have your personal account and your business account at the same bank, or do you think we should keep them separate? I mean, separate accounts for sure, but do you have two different banks? That was her question.
I do. So for my personal side, I have a few different banking. However, I want to say my two businesses I use SunTrust, but I don't think I have a personal account with them, to be honest. But as far as from the business standpoint, BB&T and SunTrust combined, which is now Truist, and just from a banking model for startup businesses, when I was comparing apples to apples, on top of the customer relationship, that's kind of what sold me on the business.
That's good. That's good.
The business account.
Yeah, you have a little more complex business model than I do, but here's one thing I like to add. I won't tell you which bank I use, but I put my personal and my business accounts, they're separate, all through the same bank, and for only one reason. I'm lazy. I get one statement a month. I can go online any time of the day or night, and I can take a look at all of my accounts in one view. And it was just that simple. It was easier for me to do it with one bank and have them handle it all. And I happen to like the banker that I'm working with, but just something to consider. When it comes to the things that Brandon's going to talk to you about in a minute, running the business is going to be complicated enough. So in my opinion, what I said was, if I can make this simpler, maybe by putting all my money in one bank, even though it's not a lot, it sure makes it simpler for me. Just a thought, something to think about. Any other questions come up, Brandon? Because I'm about to turn that over to you and get a drink of water.
Yeah, she just asked, if you decide on sole proprietorship, can you still open things like company, credit card, bank, account, insurance, or do you need the LLC?
Wow, that is a great question. I'm not sure I can answer that. Um, I would think with a sole proprietor, most things would stay in your name. So Mary Smith, that would be the name that you would operate under. And unless you had Mary's Bakery as a completely organized, sanctioned business by the state of South Carolina, I don't think that you can start or would want to start a business account with that name. Now, so you think I'm contradicting what I'm about to say about keeping those accounts separate? No, not at all. You can still have two separate bank accounts. So Mary Smith A would be your personal account, and then a separate account, Mary Smith B. But what I'd suggest to that client that's online tonight is talk to the business mentor and let us flesh that out for you. It's a great question. And frankly, one out of all the years I've done this, I've never been asked. I suspect you have to be an organized LLC or an S Corp or some other organized company in order to get a business account, because the bank will require you to have an EIN number in order to have a separate business account. So it's a great question. Sorry, I can't answer that, but we can help you a little bit later on. Anything else?
I think if I were to speculate on that, I just want to say you would use your social, but I think if you were to have the sole proprietorship, it'd be like a DBA for that account. I'm doing business as John Doe.
Yeah.
But then again, all your personal assets are tied to John Doe's account. So an LLC is just the easiest way to, kind of separate yourself from that entity. So if anything, worst case scenario were to ever happen, you just never know.
Yeah. That's a great one. And again, I may have taken the crew a little off track here by suggesting that by suggesting that you can start your company today as a sole proprietor, without the proper organization through the state, et cetera. And that's all true. And I have a lot of clients that do that. However, their business model is pretty simple. So there's one person that cuts grass on the weekends. That's pretty simple stuff. But even today, I think I'd tell that client, why not? Why not start the LLC? It costs you $170, keeps everything registered, everything's organized. It sure makes a lot more sense. And remember a minute ago, I told you how lazy I am and how I like to keep things simple. Creating an LLC, a separate organization, no matter how complex or how big the business gets or small, it stays. It just keeps things organized better. And it's a small investment that you can assure yourself, proper registration is a big thing. And who knows, your business starts getting bigger, you're going to need it anyhow. So why not start now? Brandon, I think I'm good, unless there's any other questions. Ronnie's still online. He's keeping me busy over here, but the rest of the clients are moving forward, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, awesome. I think I'm going to share my screen just so I can click through the slides, if that's okay.
Do you have control of that?
I should. There we go.
Okay.
And you should be able to see my screen.
I got it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank y'all. My name's Brandon Worley, and I'll be going over the second half, focusing on some marketing and entrepreneur characteristics. So the first thing is, just kind of an overall self-assessment, kind of analyzing, what your strengths are versus your weaknesses. And then, kind of just asking yourself, do you have what it takes to be able to go out on your own and, use the resources in the community, start something on your own, stay organized, be able to delegate projects, consistency and persistent. Those are definitely key to being able to grow the business. And then, are you motivated? So just kind of sitting back, kind of analyzing from a self-reflection point of view. Are you kind of looking at this? Do you have, some of these qualities? Starting the company, essentially, you're going to wear many hats over time. But, starting out, you are the CEO, so you're in charge. And I'll tell you, starting out, the most important thing is getting revenue to come in. So really focusing on, the sales. How are you going to bring in that first dollar and that next dollar? And to really focusing on the sales side. And then, as you continue to grow, you'll be able to branch out and have an administrative. And then from there, you'll really be able to see your team kind of grow over time. And so from the, and then this is where building relationships comes into play. It's where, setting up an accountant that have you somebody that's going to be reviewing your books, helping you with taxes, and human resources will definitely be a department that grows over time. And then marketing. So really marketing and sales is really where you want to focus in the beginning and how you're going to be getting sales or donations if you're a nonprofit. So entrepreneur characteristics, an assertive entrepreneur versus an aggressive. The difference in these type of leadership styles is one that, having self-control, having empathy for others, being able to connect with someone on an emotional, with some emotional attachment, and then having respect. Let's see. So there's good and bad motivation for wanting to get into doing business on your own. As far as what's motivating you to go into business on your own, and kind of really think, is this a good motivation or a bad motivation? And a good motivation example would be, hey, I want to expand my leverage, my talents, and make a better life for me and my family. Whereas a bad motivation is just, hey, I'm not happy at work. I don't like my boss. Things just aren't working out right now. So, being in a position to, be able to thrive in that business when you step away and start on your own, just kind of really sit back and think about what it is that motivates you to do that. Let's see. So as far as leadership style, identify your style, which is more effective. And really both. Introverts are just as successful as extroverts. So it's really kind of sitting back and analyzing, what type of leader are you? Are you more of an introvert or extrovert? And being able to leverage your strengths once you identify that. So extroverts, more risk taker. They talk a lot, high energy, quick to respond. Where introverts more, behind the scenes, analytical, lower risk, and it takes them a while to earn someone's trust. Let's see in the chat. Good. As far as decision making, when in business, essentially before any decision is made, really need to sit back, observe the situation, assess, and then act. It's easy just to jump right in and make a decision, but in business, it could cost you money, time, and really just anytime when you're making a decision for the business, really need to take the time to observe it, assess what's the pros and the cons, and then act. So how to delegate, just remembering the 3 E's. We got educate, expectations, and the third one's empower. However, when you're delegating, just remember that communication is key. So really educating those project details. What's the who, what's the what, where, when, and why, and being able to set those expectations. So what's the goal, what's the clear deadlines, and what's the projected outcome? As far as on the, remember to empower, being able to step back, just offering help as needed, and then identify other team members that may be able to help to assist. And then as you continue to delegate these tasks, just remember to continue to review and reward performance, and give recognition when it's deserved. Let's see. So the impact of good delegating does free up your time. So starting out, really kind of identifying the areas that your strengths are, and identifying the areas that your weaknesses are is where you can really learn to what you want to delegate. So essentially something that you're not as good at, you can find a way to somehow delegate it, whether it's hiring an additional part-time employee or finding somebody to volunteer. But essentially it allows you to free up your time more strategically. And then business pros do recommend that as a CEO or director to spend 50% of your time managing the business, which is, the inside operations, employee relations, the back end admin work, and then 50% working on the growth. So expansion, growing consumers or growing donors if you're a nonprofit. So trying to, manage that and keep it on an equal playing field. Let's see. So be able to identify areas that you're going to need help in. So sit back and really say, hey, what am I good at? What am I not good at? And, be able to write out where you need help and be able to sit back and identify where can you go to get that help. So let's see. Critical success factors are self-awareness, being able to identify strengths from your past experience or expertise, training, finding resources in the community, and then are you a quick study or a fast learner? So then identify your weaknesses. So have you done enough research? What's your competition look like? And what's your competition business model look like, and how are you going to be better than the competition? What are you going to be doing that they're not already doing? And then let's see. And then as potential weaknesses, if you're not motivated or not dedicated enough to your mission. I'd also say, critical success factor, definitely being able to sit back, write out, a mission statement for your company. What are the goals of the company? And, what's the long-term vision? And that kind of all comes together when you're sitting back and doing your business plan, writing out what's the mission. And, as you develop that business model plan, you're able to kind of fill in, how does this mission sustain? How does this mission continue to grow? So honest self-assessment. Why am I doing this? So essentially with the business plan, we got a plan for it. We're trying to fill in the gaps, right? We're filling in the gaps where another company is not providing that service or they're not providing that product. You're going to continue to modify your plan. You're going to continue to add to your plan. And then always be able to, continue to identify and amend approaches that might not have worked as well as you thought they would have. So being able to sit back and has some key performance indicators along the way, you know, what's going well, what's not going so well, and stick to doing what's working, right? And then as far as constant self-improvement, you know, constantly trying to, you know, go through, you know, whether it's our self-care or, you know, continuing education in the field that we're pursuing, you know, yoga, networking, meditation, something that's going to help you constantly become a better you. So, and when you get into business and you start to delegate, it can become overwhelming. And so that's why, you know, self-improvement is big, and taking care of yourself and making sure you're A1. So that way, when you're showing up every day, you can be your best. So critical success factors, always having the willingness to ask input from others, you know, whether it's a competitor or a mentor. I would say family and friends, but, you know, not all of them might have ran a business or be in the field that you're going into, but essentially the willingness to help ask for input from others, you know, essentially those who have been successful or those who are in the business currently, or just really asking for input from others. So never be afraid to ask, you know, how something is done or how somebody did something. Let's see. And then effective time management, being able to time block out what you're going to be doing and when, you know, what's the priority that's going to, like I try to tell myself, if I can, you know, get done at minimum 1 to 2 organizational development things a day, right? Somewhere in my 24-hour schedule, I got to find time to fit in, you know, 1 to 2 organizational development things a day. And that's just effectively managing my time, because if I do that every day and there's 365 days a year, that's 600, you know, steps that I move the organization forward. So, and then, you know, it can depend on what those 1 or 2 things are, but as long as we're constantly, you know, aware of what our time and how we can use it, and how we can maximize it to continue to grow the organization. Let's see. So being in the right time at the right location when you're setting appointments, adequate capital in some circumstances, you know, if you're going to be purchasing a building or, you know, buying inventory as a startup, but there's really ways around having adequate capital. If you can, you know, construct a model to where, you know, you're bringing in sales before, where you have the sales essentially before purchasing the product, and essentially you just are the middleman. So, but adequate capital does help, especially in the startup phase, when you're still going through some trial and error. The ability to manage and multitask, education and experience in the field, and then a strong work ethic. So let's get right into, let's see, marketing your business. So being able to sit back, identify, this is key, is what services and product are you providing? So, you know, you might start out, you might have some products and you're starting out with 3 to 4 and over time growing that, but really sitting back, what is it that your business is going to be providing, whether it's services or a product? And then once you have that, being able to, you know, raise awareness around that brand. And essentially this is where I say that your mission comes into play now too, because you got to be able to sell yourself first, because the product or service will not sell itself. And then just being, you know, trying different marketing strategies, what works best, an email campaign versus a social media, or if you have an online store, you can always, you know, send traffic to an online store. So, you know, starting up, you never know what's going to be the ultimate, you know, lead conversion for you. So, you know, just to really focus your energy maybe on 2 to 3 avenues and really see how those work, instead of trying all of them at once, but really focusing on, you know, at least 2 to 3 different marketing strategies, even door knocking, mailers, cold calling, there's a ton of different ways that you can market. And so really what works best, it depends on the industry and the population that you're trying to target and outreach. So, if your population is a younger population, right, social media would definitely be one that you could run some ads and get viewers in front of. So it really just varies. So just keeping an open mind when you do start marketing. It's going to be, trial and error to see what does work best. As far as for the product and service, identify who needs it. So, is it just males or is it males and females? What's the age range? Then, really getting specific with this will help you target the people that you're trying to outreach to. Why do they need it? And then, how is it different or better than the competition? So marketing plan considerations, customer demographics. What's the demographic? What's their spending? What's the target percent of the income potential from that demographic? This is a lot of stuff that you can look up online. If you kind of do some research on Google and, type in the industry that you're going to be, what's the market cap within that industry? So gender, what's their gender, age, race, marital status? Do you have a product or a service that's just for married couples, or is it just for, single, or is it just for bachelors or just for bachelorettes? So really sitting back and being able to get really specific with, who are the people that's going to be using your product or service will help you when getting your marketing off the ground. What are their buying habits? What are their behaviors? So like a lot of people, are buying from Amazon nowadays, where I know my grandparents, I don't think they've ever placed an order on Amazon. They still go in store, right? So knowing who's your population, who are you targeting, and what's their preference? What's that? And then what's that full market size? Is it a 500 million market cap? And, what's a realistic penetration that we can, tap into?
So Brandon?
Yes.
I've got to interrupt you. Now that you know that I buy my coffee at Quick Trip and I do use Amazon, where do I fall in your demographics chart?
You say you buy coffee at Quick Trip and you do use Amazon?
Yes. Yeah, I know what you're going to say. A cheap retired guy.
No. I mean, well, I was gonna add lazy, because Amazon is just one click buy and then it comes straight to your door.
I know, I'm very conflicted, but I had that.
I think my grandparents, they just don't know how to operate the complexity of the World Wide Web as well as others. But no, that's a trick question. I don't know. I don't know how I'd market to you if you buy your coffee at QT and shop on Amazon. I'd probably just come knock your door.
Perfect.
Let's see. So competition, what's their size of operation? What's the number of employees they have? What's the price of the product that they're selling? What's the quality? Are you able to get better quality product, but might have to charge a little higher price? Sometimes that's worth, people are willing to pay a little more if they get better quality, right? So what other services are they providing? Generally, what are their other revenue streams that are coming in? The reputation, what's their strengths versus the weaknesses? And then, don't be afraid to have personal visits or observations of their operation. Who's their suppliers and contractors and other businesses in the area? Hold on one second. Let's stop this. Hey, Jay. Hey, yeah. Yeah, well, I sent Mike a Chinese food. Yeah, I did earlier. I sent Mike a text that I was like, I was gonna be here. No, that's no problem.
Well, we've never had this before, folks.
I do.
So bear with us.
I got y'all. Yeah, y'all too. Sorry about that. Let's see. I was trying to mute my. Let's see. So, other businesses in the area. So, what in your area other businesses are there, or if there aren't any, maybe that's an optimal opportunity for you to come in and be able to really push for that. Let's see. So, price. What's the consumer reaction? Is it off the market driven? So, like oil right now is shooting through the roof. So, oil, if you're getting in the oil industry, that's typically a market driven industry. Just being aware of that, what market is the service or the product that you're going to be offering? Is it driven by the market? And being able to prepare for that, in times of crisis. So, what's the cost? And then, kind of always keep an eye on your competition of their price. And are you offering credit terms and discounts versus, payment plans or promotions, to get your product or your services off the ground? So sales, being able to find these qualified clients, staying in contact with the customer. And then, practicing your presentations, practicing your sales pitch, continue to prepare bids and proposals for, never being able to ask for the sale. And that's how you close the deal and then continue to follow up. No is not always no's, just not today, maybe another time, right? So continue to follow up. And then, after each sale or after each sale that was lost, kind of sitting back and doing an after action review, what went well, what could work, what could be done better, and, constantly improving your process. So some do struggle with sales. There's ways through that by, one, planning, right? Planning out what does the sale look like if it's in person or if it's online, how is the funnel traffic to get the completed sale? Preparation, so preparing, and then really practicing. So listen more than you talk. There's 3 levels of active listening when in communication with the client. Essentially, that first level, you're here, you're listening to them, but you're still thinking about what you're about to say. Level 2, you're listening to the person, you're not thinking about what you're about to say. But then the difference between level 2 and where you get to level 3, which is where we want to be, you're fully listening. You're not thinking about what you're about to say, but you're also emotionally engaged and connected. And that's where we really want to be when in the moment with our clients, where we're doing way more listening and connection with them than talking. And then that that's how we can really be able to sit back and see how we can be a service to them. So understand objections. No, it's just not as simple. It's just simple. Not today, but another time. Keep yourselves simple. A lot of people don't like complex. Remain confident. Be able to build a bridge if somebody, it's not a good time. When can I call you back? Or when's a good time to follow up? Or do you mind if I follow up in 6 months? See if anything's changed, right? Use a calendar. Keep good records. That's the key, because a lot of sales do come from the follow-up. So just like anything, keep good records to continue to follow up. So branding and consistency, your name, recognition, logo, everywhere you go, you got to share what you do and how you help others. Constantly be on top of the qualifications of whether it's a product or a service. Giving your market, some identity, a logo, constantly have your logo everywhere. And then really being able to sit back, and this is kind of going to be like more of a sub plan to your business plan, and advertising and marketing, where that's kind of like a whole separate sub plan to your business plan. You know, how are you going to go about getting customer A to your product over here, which is B, right? And so online marketing, you need a clean, mobile, optimized website with easy payment options. And when I'm clean, optimized website, you know, not a lot of wording, maybe more graphics or video, you know, maybe some recommendations or referrals. And then, you know, with the easy payment option, you know, whether it's Square, Stripe, there's tons out there, but let's see, claim brand on multiple platforms. So, you know, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, you know, you definitely need a website. I'm trying to think if I've missed any. There's so many out there, but essentially, you know, and being able to focus on, like I was saying earlier, you know, 2 to 3 when you're starting out, really grow those and focus on that. And then, you know, as you get bigger and bigger, you can grow your awareness on more and more platforms. But it's hard to really, you know, maintain all of them if it's just a one-man show. You know, really maintain all of them and really have good content out there. So starting now, I would recommend, you know, focusing on 1 to 3 and just really getting a lot of good content out there, and then slowly growing on the multiple platforms. Constantly read and respond to reviews. Google and Facebook are still king. I know for nonprofits, Google offers grants to run ads. I don't believe Facebook does yet, but I can tell you from the time I've started running ads till now, they definitely are starting to go up more and more each year, because it's these guys have got it down to a science as far as logarithms and getting in front of the right people. But you definitely got to be able to pay. So, I mean, you know, depending on what's in your budget, you could probably spend $100 and get your ad seen in front of a few thousand people, right? Which might turn into a sale. You know, so that 100 could turn into a few grand, depending on what you're offering, which is a good return, in my opinion. So be social, be yourself, be real. That sells. All right, then here we are at the final section, wrap up. Small business readiness self-assessment. Let's see.
I guess you want me to take it from here?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Well, Brandon, thank you. Very good presentation on the marketing and the aspects of, I guess I'd call it the sort of softer side of getting into business. So thank you very much for your input. Always enjoy it. Most of all, to all the ladies and gentlemen who are online, thank you for your time. You've been generous with it. I think I'm going to hit a button here that says poll. So if you would be kind enough to read this, maybe it doesn't come up, but any event, if you didn't see that, please come back online and ask for some mentor help as you need it. And most of all, in reminder, I will be sending out the attachments shortly. So you'll get that, including a YouTube link that has this workshop plus others online. Anything to add, Brandon?
Just that there are resources out there through, when you go through SCORE, there's other recorded, you know, workshops that have been done in the past, whether it's all the way from starting a nonprofit to starting an LLC, to setting up a bank account. So all these resources are out there through the SCORE website as well, in that library section.
Excellent. All right. Thank you again, Brandon. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. This is adjourned for the evening, and please stay safe, stay healthy. Let us know if we can help you. Good night.